The desert does not wave flags, it swallows them across the vast belt of the Sahel, stretching from Senegal to Sudan. A quiet war has been unfolding for more than a decade. It is not a conventional war of front lines and victory speeches. It is a layered conflict of insurgency, fractured states, foreign militaries, mercenaries, gold roots, and communities caught between them. The question lingers like desert dust: who really controls the Sahel, a region under pressure? The Sahel runs through Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, and parts of Nigeria, among others. It is a transition zone between the Sahara Desert and sub-Saharan Africa. Climate change has intensified droughts, population growth strains fragile economies, governance gaps leave rural areas thinly administered, where state presence is minimal, armed groups move in. After the collapse of Libya in 2011, weapons flowed south, fighters crossed porous borders. In 2012, northern Mali fell to a coalition of Tuareg rebels and jihadist groups. That moment reshaped the region. The insurgents. The insurgency landscape is fragmented but interconnected. Groups linked to Al-Qaeda operate under the banner of Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, known as JNIM. Others pledge allegiance to the so-called Islamic State, operating as Islamic State Sahel Province in the Lake Chad Basin. Boko Haram and its splinter faction IS will AP continue attacks around northeastern Nigeria and neighboring states. These groups exploit local grievances. Many conflicts begin not as global jihad, but as disputes over land, cattle routes, ethnicity, and governance. Armed organizations insert themselves into these tensions, offering protection, justice, or coercion. In parts of rural Mali and Burkina Faso, insurgents tax communities, regulate markets, and impose parallel judicial systems. In such zones, control is less about holding cities and more about shaping daily life. The coups and the collapse of trust. Between 2020 and 2023, military coups struck Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, each into cited insecurity and civilian government failure as justification. But coups did not immediately reverse the insurgent tide. In fact, violence spread further south in some areas. Regional cooperation weakened. The economic community of West African states imposed sanctions at times, deepening tensions between military governments and their neighbors. The desert shifted again. France and the limits of intervention. France intervened militarily in Mali in 2013 through Operation Serval, later expanding to Operation Barkhane. At its height, thousands of French troops were deployed across the Sahel. Initially, the intervention pushed back jihadist advances. Major towns were retaken. Insurgent leaders were targeted. But over time, public sentiment in parts of the Sahel turned against France. Critics argued that despite years of foreign presence, insecurity persisted or worsened. Protests grew in Bamako and Ouagadougou. French troops eventually withdrew from Mali, then Burkina Faso and Niger. The vacuum did not remain empty. Russia and the Wagner factor. As French forces departed, Russian influence increased. The private military company known as the Wagner Group expanded its footprint in Mali and later elsewhere in the region. Wagner offered security assistance to military governments. In exchange, analysts point to access to mining concessions and strategic partnerships. Reports from human rights organizations have accused both insurgent groups and security forces, including foreign contractors, of abuses against civilians. In this conflict, alliances are transactional. Governments seek survival. External actors seek influence. Civilians seek safety. The expanding map of violence. According to data from conflict monitoring organizations, fatalities linked to militant Islamist violence in the Sahel have increased significantly over the past decade. Burkina Faso has become one of the most affected countries in the world by insurgent attacks. Violence has moved toward coastal West Africa. Countries such as Benin and Togo have reported cross-border incursions. The fear is contagion. Meanwhile, in Nigeria's northwest, banditry and kidnapping networks operate with their own logic, sometimes overlapping with ideological insurgency. Sometimes driven by profit, the lines blur. Gold smuggling, and survival economies, control of the desert is not only about ideology, it is also about roots. The Sahel sits astride trafficking corridors for gold, fuel, weapons, and migrants heading north toward North Africa and Europe, artisanal gold mines in Mali, Burkina Faso. And Niger generate billions of dollars annually, much of it outside formal state oversight. Armed groups tax these flows, local militias defend ethnic constituencies, state forces compete for authority, the desert becomes an economic chessboard without a referee. Climate and the future of conflict. Climate stress intensifies everything, shrinking water sources. Pushers and farmers into closer contact. Disputes once settled by local custom now intersect with weapons supplied through regional conflict networks. Young men facing unemployment and marginalization become vulnerable to recruitment. The war is not silent to those living it, but it is often peripheral to global headlines. So who controls the desert? No single actor. In capital cities, governments hold formal authority. In certain towns, national armies maintain checkpoints in remote communes. Insurgent groups may dictate movement and justice in mining zones. Local militias exert control. Foreign powers influence strategy but do not command the terrain. Control in the Sahel is layered, shifting, and negotiated daily. The desert answers to whoever can project force, provide protection, or manage trade at a given moment. And that answer can change with the next convoy, the next drought, or the next coup. The silent war continues, not as a clash of armies alone, but as a contest over legitimacy, survival, and power in one of the world's most fragile regions. The sand does not keep score. It only records footprints,